You probably think of the Ford Escort Mark 1 as just another small car from the past. But what if I told you this modest little machine once carried formula racing engines, outsmarted rally tracks with water tanks in the back seat, and even had a version powerful enough to humiliate sports cars? Yeah, beneath that friendly, boxy design lies a cow with secrets so wild, even die-hard gearheads often miss them. This isn't just nostalgia. This is about forgotten engineering, stealthy power, and a time when Ford wasn't just building cars, they were quietly building legends. Today, we're diving into 8 shocking truths about the Ford Escort Mark 1 that most people have never heard of, including a failed experiment with a rotary engine that could have changed everything. Let's get into it. 1. The RS 1600, a family car with a racing heart. At first glance, the Ford Escort RS 1600 looked like a sporty trim level, a bit of flair, a spoiler, maybe some stripes. But pop the hood, and you discover something far more serious. A race-bred Cosworth BDA engine, hiding in plain sight. This wasn't your average commuter car. The BDA engine, originally developed for Formula 2 racing, brought dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and an aluminum head, technology usually reserved for track monsters, not daily drivers. In the early 1970s, this was cutting-edge stuff. Out of the factory, it made around 115 to 120 horsepower. But that was just the beginning. Tuners could easily push it further, and rally teams absolutely did. The RS 1600 quickly became a go-to for motorsport, not just because it was fast, but because it could take a beating and keep going. And here's the kicker, many of these engines were hand-assembled at Ford's AVO plant in South Eden. That's right, each RS 1600 wasn't just built. It was crafted. This wasn't just a car that looked sporty. It was sporty, through and through. And while the outside still looked like a small family sedan, under the hood, it was pure motorsport DNA, a rare and thrilling combo that made the RS 1600 legendary. But that was just the beginning of the Escort's hidden talents. 2. The sleeper van that outsmarted everyone. When people think of performance cars, a delivery van usually isn't the first image that comes to mind. But the Ford Escort van? That was a whole different beast, if you knew what you were looking at. Built to haul tools, parcels, and parts, the Escort van was designed for work. It had no rear seats, no flashy design, and no hint of speed. But under its plain, practical shell, some of these vans were hiding serious power. Mechanics and drivers in the know began swapping in engines from the 1300 GT, and even the RS models. The van's lightweight body and rear-wheel drive layout made it a surprisingly capable street machine. And because it looked so ordinary, it flew under the radar, perfect for street racing or just a little illegal fun on the weekends. Even rally crews used them to transport parts, and occasionally tuned them just enough to make sure they didn't get left behind. The result? A humble workhorse that could tear up tarmac and leave much faster-looking cars in the dust. Over time, these sleeper vans earned cult status. Not because they were loud or aggressive, but because they were smart, sneaky, and fast where it counted. And that stealthy genius didn't stop with engine swaps. Some Escorts had tricks built right into the seats. Literally. 3. The rally trick hidden in the rear seat. Most people assume the back seat of a car is for passengers. But in the world of rally racing, every inch of a vehicle has a purpose, and in some Ford Escort Mark 1 rally cars, the rear seat was repurposed for something far more strategic, water tanks. But these weren't for cooling the engine. They were installed to spray water directly onto the rear tires during dry, dusty gravel stages. Why? Traction. Rally teams discovered that a mist of water could help the tires bite into loose surfaces, improving grip just enough to shave off critical seconds. It was a clever hack, part of a much broader strategy to squeeze every ounce of performance from the car. In long-distance rallies, small advantages like this could be the difference between a podium finish and going home empty-handed. These cars weren't just fast, they were engineered with ruthless precision. And tricks like the tire-spraying water tanks showed just how far teams would go to dominate the stage. What looked like a stripped-out interior was actually a battlefield of engineering, where every detail, even water on the tires, played a role in victory. But not every innovation in the Escort was about racing, some were just straight-up quirky. And the next one? You had to pump it to believe it. 4. The foot pump windshield washer. Today, cleaning your windshield is as simple as tapping a stalk behind the steering wheel. But in the early Ford Escort Mark 1, especially the base models, things were a little more manual. Instead of an electric washer pump, you had a rubber bulb or a foot pedal, yes, a literal pump, mounted near the pedals or on the dashboard. If you wanted water on the windshield, you had to squeeze or stomp it out yourself. It sounds ridiculous now, but back then, it was a clever, low-cost solution. No electronics to fail, no motor to burn out, just a simple, hands-on fix that fit perfectly with Ford's practical design philosophy. But here's the catch: timing was everything. Imagine hitting a muddy back road in the rain, one hand on the wheel, the other trying to reach the tiny bulb, while keeping your foot steady on the gas. It turned something as basic as cleaning the windshield into a full-body coordination test. For many drivers, it was a little annoying. But for classic car lovers today, it's a nostalgic reminder of a time when cars had real personality and made you work a little for convenience. But while some Escorts made you work harder, others were the product of high-performance partnerships, like the next one, which came straight out of Lotus's racing playbook. 5. The twin-cam Lotus-powered Escort. Before the RS 1600 took the spotlight, there was another Ford Escort that quietly redefined what a small car could do, the twin-cam. And it wasn't just a marketing name. This Escort was powered by real Lotus engineering. Introduced in 1968, the Escort twin-cam was the result of Ford teaming up with Lotus to create something extraordinary. Under the hood was the same 1.6-liter dual overhead cam engine found in the Lotus Elan, a lightweight sports car that already had racing pedigree. This wasn't just a simple engine swap. To handle the extra power, Ford strengthened the Escort's chassis, upgraded the suspension with Lotus-inspired geometry, and improved the brakes. The result was a compact, everyday car that handled like a proper sports machine. With around 109 brake horsepower in a car that barely weighed a ton, the twin-cam Escort could absolutely fly, and still carry your groceries. It became the foundation for what would later become the RS 1600 and other high-performance Escorts. To the untrained eye, it looked like just another Ford. But behind the wheel, it felt like a Lotus, tight, nimble, aggressive. For collectors and enthusiasts, the twin-cam remains a rare gem. A car born from a time when automakers weren't afraid to experiment, and when practicality met pure performance. But the Escort's quirks weren't always under the hood. Sometimes, they were hidden beneath your foot. Literally. 6. The foot-operated headlight switch. Imagine driving at night on a winding country road. You want to switch from low beams to high beams, but instead of flicking a stalk on the steering column, you tap a button with your foot. That's how it worked in the early Ford Escort Mark I. Instead of using your hands, these Escorts came with a floor-mounted dip switch located near the clutch pedal. With a quick stump, you could toggle between high and low beams. No need to take your hands off the wheel. It sounds odd today, but back in the 60s and early 70s, this was standard practice across many makes. It was simple, mechanical, and incredibly intuitive once you got used to it. Especially useful during spirited driving or long rally stages when keeping your hands on the wheel meant everything. Sure, modern tech has moved way beyond foot switches, but for those who grew up driving these cars, the feel of that satisfying click underfoot is pure nostalgia. It's a small, easily forgotten detail, but it says a lot about the kind of mechanical connection drivers once had with their cars. And speaking of forgotten details, the next one involves a wild idea that almost made the Escort one of the most unique cars of its time, a rotary engine. Yes, seriously. 7. The forgotten rotary engine experiment. It sounds like a rumor, and for years, it practically was. But during the late 1960s, Ford actually flirted with the idea of putting a Wankel rotary engine into the Escort Mark I. Inspired by Mazda's daring experiments with rotary power, Ford engineers began testing prototypes of both the Escort and the car pre-fitted with rotary engines. These engines were compact, high-revving, and promised a smooth, powerful driving experience in a small package. On paper, it made sense. A lightweight car like the Escort, combined with a high-revving rotary? That could have been a game-changer. The prototypes were real, and some were even tested on the road. But then reality hit. Rotary engines, while exciting, had a reputation for poor fuel economy and questionable long-term reliability, not exactly a great fit for a brand that prided itself on affordable, durable family cars. So the idea was shelved, and the rotary Escort never made it past the prototype stage. But just imagine it, the howl of a Wankel engine echoing from a humble little Ford that no one saw coming. It's one of those fascinating what-if moments in automotive history. A glimpse into a world where the Escort might have become something far more exotic. But while Ford was dreaming big, it was also cutting costs, sometimes in surprising ways. Even something as simple as a dashboard clock wasn't guaranteed. 8. The optional clock and bare-bones simplicity. Today, Even the cheapest cars come with touchscreen displays, digital gauges, and more tech than most drivers actually use. But back in the late 60s and early 70s, Ford had a very different approach. Everything was optional, including something as basic as a clock. In many Ford Escort Mark 1 base models, if you didn't specifically pay for a dashboard clock, you didn't get one. What you got instead was a blanking plate, a literal piece of plastic where the clock would have been. A constant reminder that time wasn't included in the base price. And it didn't stop there. Features like hand crank windows, rubber floor mats, and vinyl seats were all part of the Barebones package. It might sound cheap today, but this was intentional. Ford wanted the Escort to be affordable, easy to maintain, and customizable based on how much a buyer was willing to spend. This cost-conscious design gave buyers control. Want a radio? Pay for it. Want carpets? Add it on. Everything you skipped saved money, and that made the Escort a perfect fit for families, first-time drivers, and budget-conscious racers alike. But it also gave the Escort personality. These little differences, clocks, cranks, and trim, told you something about the owner. And today, when you see an original Mark 1 still rocking its blanking plate, it's a tiny time capsule from a very different era of driving. So what does it all add up to? More than just nostalgia. The Ford Escort Mark 1 wasn't just a car, it was a machine full of secrets, surprises, and soul. The Ford Escort Mark 1 was never just a simple commuter. Beneath its modest looks lived race-ready engines, clever engineering hacks, and quirks that gave it real soul. Whether it was hand-built power, foot pump washers, or secret Rotary experiments, every detail told a story. It wasn't perfect, but that's what made it unforgettable. Which of these forgotten features surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more untold legends of automotive history.